My name is Elizabeth Lindsay. I'm the board chair for NTIA, and I'm so excited to introduce our next event, which is a fireside chat. We are so lucky and thrilled and honored to have Alan Davidson here, who is NTIA administrator and the president's principal advisor on telecommunications and information policy. As administrator, Alan oversees a federal agency with more than 500 employees working to close the digital divide, manage federal spectrum resources, and build a better internet. Alan has spent the past 25 years working at the intersection of internet technology, public policy, and the law. In his roles in government, public interest groups, and companies, Alan has focused on how society makes choices about the technologies we build. Alan has been a longtime leader in the internet nonprofit community, serving as director of New America's Open Technology Institute, where he worked to promote equitable broadband access and adoption. As associate director of the Center for Democracy and Technology, Alan was an advocate for civil liberties and human rights online in some of the earliest internet policy debates. Alan will be joined by Angela Siefer, Executive Director of the National Digital Inclusion Alliance. Please join me in giving them a warm welcome.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thanks.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm pretty excited to have Alan Davidson here. Am I losing my mic? I just lost my mic. It's back. Can you hear me? No, I don't have a mic. AV friends, are you fixing my mic? Thank you so much. Awesome sauce. So excited to have Alan here with us from the U.S. Department of Commerce, who's in charge of a few $1 billion for broadband deployment and digital equity. Of course, we care a little bit more about the digital equity money, but there's that non-deployment part. We also care about, just lost my mic again, friends.
What?
Last day, I'm going to start to get snarky.
But you we love all our children equally, right? So, but maybe digital equity a little more.
So we're excited to talk to Alan about what's going on at Commerce, and recognizing that at the beginning of the conversation, we asked folks to lift their hands and tell us if this is their first time here, and we do have some first timers. So for those of you who are old timers, just be patient with us, because I've asked Alan to maybe start from the beginning a little bit, just because we have some new folks. So Alan, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. My goodness, look at all you beautiful digital inclusion people. I mean, this is really, exactly. Congratulations to you, Angela, and to NTIA. I mean, it is amazing to see how many people are here. 1,300 people, you said, this year. That is really incredible. To see the field growing. Thank you all for being here.
Okay, Alan, let's just start with some of the basics.
Yep.
We'll give you the hard questions later. There's the BEAD money, which broadband equity access deployment money. There's the Digital Equity Act money. There's the Tribal Broadband Connectivity Program, right? There's these different funds right now. Can you just give us a quick overview of the different pots of money?
Right. Okay, so the backdrop for all of this is, we're investing tens of billions of dollars. We've never done it before. We're not going to do it again. We've got within NTIA about $50 billion that we're administering. The biggest pot of that is our state grant program, the BEAD program, as many of you have heard, and $42 billion money going out to the states. The states and it's to connect. This is really an access program to make sure that everybody has the availability of a connection. Reliable, affordable, high-speed internet is our North Star, and making sure that everybody has access is the key starting point. The big milestones on BEAD, and this is a very big year for BEAD, because every state at the end of 2023 submitted an initial plan. They all got them in on time, so congratulations to the broadband officers who are here in the room. And now this year, we're going to be reviewing those plans. The states are going to be running challenge processes to make sure their maps are correct, and they're going to be doing their grant making. So this is a very big year, 2024, for BEAD, and that it impacts our digital equity agenda. Real quick, we've got a $1 billion middle mile program that's being implemented right now. There's a tribal connectivity program, $2 billion out the door, another $1 billion in a funding notice. We were getting applications that are coming in March, and that money's going to go out the door this year. So that's the backdrop, and I say that because for those of us who care about inclusion and equity, those programs are also important. It's not just about the Digital Equity Act, it's also about making sure that we leverage those programs in service of our ultimate goal, which is meaningful adoption, getting people to thrive online, digital equity.
Great, thank you, Alan. The Digital Equity Act funds, so there's the funds that go through the states, and then
Right.
there's the federal funds. So being a digital equity community, can you talk a bit about the funds that go through the states and how community-based organizations might end up with some of those funds?
So it's a almost $3 billion, $2.75 billion pot of money. It starts with digital equity plans, right? And every state and territory in America, it's very exciting, is going to have a digital equity plan accepted by NTIA in the coming months, right? And we've never had that before. And right, it's amazing, right? And it's been a huge amount of work, and many of you have been involved in this, and congratulations, it's been a huge amount of work, and we have a little breaking news today, which is very exciting, which is that NTIA has just accepted this morning, it's the first plan that we've officially accepted, the first digital equity plan, and it's from the state of Maine.
Woo!
And I have to say, it's very exciting to get the first one accepted. There's a lot more to come, but congratulations to Maine. Maine actually did a terrific job. Went sort of, I think in some ways in our minds, like digital equity first, saying like we need to develop this plan so that the other work on BEAD, on deployment, on tribal, is informed by the approach to digital equity. And so they've got a plan that is the first one that we've been able to accept now. And I'll just say congratulations to the broadband office, Andrew Butcher, who should stand up, I think, so we can appropriately embarrass him. He's right here. Congratulations to Maine. Congratulations to Maine. So that's exciting, and we're moving forward, and there's a lot, as I say, a lot more to come. The next step is once we've got plans accepted, we will be starting up the state capacity program.
Right.
It's probably around $800 million that's going to be in this first round money to states to implement their plans. So this is something to pay attention to, and then after that comes our competitive grant program, which is direct grants, not through the states, for digital equity work. And that is coming, the way the statute works, a little complicated, but after we make our first award for the capacity plan, then shortly afterwards we can open up the competitive grant program. So this is all coming in the coming months.
Great. Okay, so if folks are interested in accessing, let's start with the state one, accessing
Right.
some of the state funds, what's some guidance you could provide to them regarding accessing those funds?
Well, I think, I guess I would start by saying, like, prepare for this coming soon, right? That the state capacity grants, once we've got all the plans in, and you can just see they're coming in and they're going to be accepted, as I say, in the coming months, be ready and be working with your states, with your broadband offices,
Right.
with the folks who are doing digital equity planning in the state, because that's going to be an essential partnership. Yeah.
If someone hasn't talked
Right.
to their state broadband office, where do they find that information?
They can find it on our website, actually, at NTIA, and or talk to the many NTIA people who are walking around this conference. They would be more than happy to direct you. We've got the lists online. We also have federal program officers in every state who are thinking about this, and they are here to be a resource for all of you, and not just on the BEAD program where they're spending a lot of time, but on digital equity as well. I would also say, just quick words of advice, so get to know your state broadband
Right.
folks, get plugged into their process. I'd say even, don't wait for this competitive grant process, even though there will be money directly going out into the field. I think the state capacity grants are going to be incredibly important. This is where implementation is going to happen, and that money, is important money to be part of. And then I would say also, we could talk a little bit about this, but get ready for the competitive grant process
Right.
too, because that's coming.
Right, okay, so two different pots of money.
Right.
One you access through your state or your territory, and then the other one you access through NTIA.
Right.
So you would apply directly to NTIA. What guidance do you have for folks as they think about those federal competitive grants?
So the federal competitive grants, I have to say, it's a first-of-a-kind program. First of all, I should say, what's incredible here is the amount of money that we're putting out into the field, right? We're going to, in the coming years, put out more money, spend more money, federal money on digital equity than we've spent in the history of digital equity, right? So there's a lot of money. Yes, that's worth applause. Thank you, right? And it's really thanks to the bipartisan infrastructure law, President Biden's leadership, cares a lot about this issue and talks about it all the time. I think it makes, so we should just reflect on the fact that there's this huge opportunity. On the competitive grant process, the grants that we're going to be giving out, one thing that I have been thinking about, and I'm concerned, concern is a strong word, but I used to run a nonprofit, a small nonprofit. Mm-hmm. I know how hard it is to apply for government money. Right, and I think one thing that we are thinking about and want input on is how to do this well so that we can reach all of the many diverse small organizations that work in this field, right? And I'll just say, as a former nonprofit director, we know that it's going to take it's going to be hard for every organization to build up the infrastructure, the accounting systems, the grant writing, capacity that you need to apply for and then manage a federal grant. So we're really interested in how we can help do this at scale and think about ways to do that. So I would just say, we're going to put out a notice. We'll have a lot of more detail about this in the coming months. But think about I'd say there's going to be strength in numbers, right? There's going to be strength in finding ways to scale up, to partner, and I say that because, not because it's going to necessarily be a requirement, but because we know that having hundreds of organizations all try to build up their federal grant making capacity for this these small set of grant rounds is probably not the smartest way to spend money in the field. So strength in numbers, think about partners, stay tuned for more.
So,
is that helpful?
Yes, no, that's perfect. That meshes perfectly with what Angie shared with us on her panel, Angie Bennett also from NTIA, about the necessity of those coalitions and bringing folks together. That also just creates a stronger proposal. We all know that, right? When you're covering more of the bases and you're able to say we're addressing these different aspects of what the application is asking us for, just looks better. So form those partnerships to have the best application that they're going to look at, and some of those partners may be in the room here today. Alan, so these aren't the first grants that you all have been distributing. You've already been distributing the Tribal Broadband Connectivity Program, the Connecting Minority Communities Program. What are some lessons learned and best practices that you've seen come in from those programs that these folks may want to hear about?
Interesting. I think a couple of things to think about. One is, needs vary widely. I know I don't have to tell you that. They do vary widely, and we've seen that among these different communities. There are communities where access is still a critical piece of the puzzle. And I was just thinking, I had a chance to visit Alaska a year ago, almost 16 months ago, and I visited a village on the shores of the Yukon River in the interior, where people were showing me their internet access bills. They are paying $500 or $600 a month to have very poor quality service access to the internet. And they pay it and I don't want to say they pay it gladly, but they pay it because what would you pay if this was your lifeline to the outside world? We are going to fix that, not just by directly addressing affordability, but through access. We're actually we have a program through the Tribal Connectivity Program. We're going to be running fiber up the Yukon River, connecting these communities with very high quality service, and it'll bring down the prices radically. So in some places, that may be an extreme example, but in some places, access is really a key component. We've seen that in the program. The other thing is that we're seeing these programs start to we're leveraging these programs for what I think of as often digital equity purposes. So the Connecting Minority Communities program, for example, has been doing a terrific thing out of Oklahoma State where they're doing workforce training, fiber technician training funded by our CMC program, our Connecting Minority Communities program. We see a lot of innovative uses of our tribal money, including things like creating more native language content. So content that didn't exist before online, but is being created with an idea of how to both bring communities online and help them feel comfortable being online, but also creating a repository of cultural history and memory that is really powerful, and again is a reason that people want to be online. And one of the biggest things, I could say a lot about all these programs, but one of the things that I feel like I really, as I was saying it, that I really have learned from some of the tribal programs that we're running is that this isn't just about them receiving the internet. I think there's a model of these communities, we're bringing the internet and all of the opportunities that come with it. And that is a part of it, like education and jobs and telehealth. All those things will be drivers. But another part of it is what we in the internet community receive when these communities get online, right? That we have access now to their culture, their local knowledge, their history, and it's really powerful to see it up close. And I think that that is a lesson I've really learned, that we don't build for, we build with, and that it's not just these communities that get benefits from access and adoption, it's all of us who benefit when they are online.
Thank you for that. So let's talk BEAD, Broadband Equity Access Deployment. This is the deployment. This is the very large program deploying fiber and other infrastructure around the country. When those rules were set, it goes over the priorities. Can you go over those priorities and then how the non-deployment use of funds fits with the other uses, please?
Right, so BEAD, our $42 billion state grant program, Congress was very clear about sort of how we spend this money initially, which is states first have to reach all of the unserved locations. And that is our starting point. That is our goalpost, right? We want to make sure that all of the unserved locations, those with less than 25 megabit download, 3 megabit upload speeds, those unserved locations all have to be served. Then the next priority is underserved, sorry. So unserved first, then underserved. Those are less than 100 megabits per second downloads. Once you do the unserved and the underserved, and we're asking states to certify this in their initial plans, once they've done those, that opens up an opportunity to do a number of different things, starting with serving community anchor institutions and other non-deployment purposes. And so it's been really interesting to see states put forward to us some of their ideas about how they'd like to spend the money. I will say, well, anyway, so I think that's sort of like a little bit of a holy grail that some states are working towards.
Exactly. So this will be true in some states.
Right.
Right, that there will be funding to use for non-deployment. Do the states need to actually build out those infrastructure projects before they spend money on non-deployment, or can the fact that they know where they're spending it mean they can go ahead and...
If we've got a plan from them and we certify that they're going to reach that, they will be able to spend on these other purposes. And we're seeing that in some of the states. And look, some states, deployment is going to be a massive challenge, and we know that, and that's why the money is there. But there are a fair number of states that are going to be able to do some of these other projects, and that's exciting too. And you could think about it like there are some states that, there's a $100 million minimum. I didn't say that before in our BEAD program. Every state gets at least $100 million. Every territory gets at least $25 million. There's for some of those states, that money is going to be enough to reach anybody who's unserved and underserved. And we started to see, I can't really share too much about, because we're just starting to approve the plans, but we've seen some really innovative things out of the states. Louisiana is a great example. We've approved their plan. They've got a very interesting workforce program with their community college system to be able to lean into the workforce opportunities, the job opportunities that are going to be created here by build. We want these networks to be built and then sustained by the communities that they serve. And so leaning into that opportunity for workforce development was something really cool in Louisiana's plan. I'll just say, a lot of these plans are posted online. You can see there are a lot of other really interesting ideas. We've also seen some interesting ideas even in the sort of state challenge process, and in we're approving more of these first volumes of our plan, of folks' plans. One of the fun things I've seen that I really have enjoyed in looking through them is how people define community anchor institutions, and we've given states some flexibility. So out west, there are a whole bunch of states that have included national park ranger stations as community anchor institutions. Others have looked at community centers or daycare centers, and we've offered a fair amount of flexibility in that, and it's been interesting, kind of fun to see the creativity that the states have put into this.
So it makes sense then for this group to read their state's BEAD plans, yes? Because then that may open up another conversation with their states beyond their Digital Equity Act. Depending upon how the BEAD plan is written, there may be some opportunities for you to have a discussion with your state office about priorities. How
are they doing these workforce plans? How are they implementing this outreach to some of these community anchor institutions? These are going to be there are people in this room who I'm sure could help their states as they build out those programs, and it's worth looking because there's real money in there. Okay,
so a clarifying question for you, Alan. Does the state need to actually build that infrastructure project and spend down that money before they can spend money on their non-deployment projects?
I'm looking here. Is there like a lifeline? No, I'm pretty sure. I know the answer is no, they do not have to do that first. They're going to certify to us. We have to have confidence, and this is why we're approving our plans. And we're looking so carefully about our plan approvals. But when they have certified, and we believe and have confidence that they're going to be able to reach all of the unserved and underserved, we will allow, and they will start using this money for these other projects, and it's going to be very exciting. And so it's all happening soon, and we want that spending to happen because this is, of course, all part of how we are going to get people online.
And so I think that's a really important clarifying point for folks who care about how the non-deployment funds will be spent, that there's no need to wait. You might have an inclination to wait, and then you will have missed the window in which you can engage in a conversation with your state office.
And we're very much looking at these programs in an integrated way. The hope is it's not like there's a access deployment lane, and there's a digital equity lane, and there's a tribal lane. If we do this right, they're all part of the same lane, which is figuring out how to get people to thrive online.
Right. Okay. Awesome. I think we have time for 2 questions. Do I have a runner for the mic? Gina? Thank you. Thank you so much. Abby's rushing up too. So there's our 2 runners. Questions for Alan? Whoever Abby and Gina sees first. Okay, Abby.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
I'm really nervous asking this question, sorry. My name is Wiley Goodman. I'm with the Berkshire Regional Planning Commission, so working with Massachusetts Broadband, Institute always has been fabulous and working on digital equity plans in 14 communities across Berkshire County.
Fabulous.
So we have a mix of sort of a small urban center in Pittsfield and then a lot of rural communities. According to the broadband maps, we look like we are served for the most part. And so we fall into this very difficult, challenging liminal space, I love that word, where we have mostly, but we're mostly in a monopoly environment, so we have a single provider. Of course, with ACP going away, the prices for everyone are going to go up, and we don't have a lot of wiggle room. And I'm really curious about policy, how the FCC is thinking about policy to encourage reduce the cost of like make-ready work or things that we can advocate for in our municipal digital equity plans to help bring in competition in a monopoly environment where it's hard to encourage new ISPs.
So it's a terrific question. I've got a couple of quick things to say. First of all, affordability is a necessity, not a luxury here. I think we all know that. And the fact is, we haven't said a lot about it, but it's a key part of what we're trying to achieve in our programs, for sure. The second is, we haven't talked about ACP, but I know you've talked about it over the last couple of days, and I will just throw chime in to say, ACP is so critical. It's critical for affordability. I will also say it's critical for what we're trying to achieve, even on the deployment side. We know it's going to be a lot harder to deploy networks if there isn't a customer base on the other side of folks who are able to afford those networks. So we have not given up. We are pushing hard. And I think those who care, this is an important moment to be part of that conversation. So, and I'll say the administration has made it a top priority. It's in our supplemental request to Congress. There's a lot that's going on the Hill, and the next few weeks and months are going to be pretty critical here. Weeks, really, more than months.
Thank you, Alan.
And then the last thing I'll just say really quickly is this is a huge particular issue about what we can do. One thing that we have asked, and I'm happy to talk about it more maybe offline too, is just because I know we're short on time, but I'll say we've asked states, we've required them to show us their plan for how they're going to deal with affordability, and not just low-cost option affordability, but what we've called some have called middle-class affordability. This question of how do we make sure when we're building networks and they're the only network there, or when network, when there is, that we've got a plan for making sure that they stay affordable. There's lots of different tools in the toolbox for that. And I think different states are taking very different approaches, but I think there's a set of interesting practices to look at. If you look at the totality of initial plans we've received, there's a lot of interesting approaches that are within those plans around affordability writ large, and we're going to try and pull those out and mine those, and I'd encourage you to take a look.
Okay,
so that was a long answer.
Yes,
but
no,
yeah.
we appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay, last question comes from Laura. Very appropriate.
Hi, I'm Laura Breeden. I'm on the board of NDIA, and I've worked twice at NTIA, so I have
Nice to
some
see you.
idea I have some idea what's going on behind the scenes. Oh my God. And I really appreciate your candor as a federal official. That's not always easy. My question is any other country doing this? I mean, this is an amazing thing for our country to accomplish, that people would actually work on these plans and that we would have them from all 50 states and so forth. Do you know if this is happening anywhere else in the world?
It's a great question. Actually, it's interesting you ask. The short answer is yes, and we're starting to build a little community of practice among nerdy NTIA assistant secretary types around the world. I was just meeting yesterday with my counterpart from Germany. They're a little behind us. They're about to embark on a program. We're sort of comparing notes. The UK is actually about 18 months ahead of us. They have a program, actually, and they're deploying, their baseline is gigabit speed, so I was a little jealous. But, it's interesting to compare notes that, like, we have a high cost threshold that states are going to put in place. Every state's going to have a different high cost threshold for where they might use alternate technologies. Great Britain's doing almost exactly the same thing, and they have, it's like a 5,000 pound threshold, and then they go to satellite. So low Earth orbit satellite, that's their approach. So it's fun to compare notes with folks. I'm not sure, everybody's a little different. The European Commission is doing stuff. There's countries all around the world, hugely different challenges in different places. We're doing a lot of work on development in the global south. We're doing work with a bunch of different countries in Africa right now. Anyway, I think there is a growing community of practice. I'm not sure there's one I would point to that's quite the same. Digital equity, there's still a lot of focus internationally on more on access and deployment than I think there is on digital equity. And I do think we lead the world in our thinking on this. And when I look at the challenges, as I just think, about as you finish up your program here and go off, it's a lot of work, right? We've got one shot at this. We've been given billions of dollars. We won't get that chance again. We have to think about sustainability of this field because we're going to get this infusion of money, and then we don't know what the back end of it looks like. We're a diverse community. We're a community of small organizations, largely, some larger organizations. How do we deal with that? To me, the big thing that we can use this money for, and the thing that gives me hope, seeing this growing digital inclusion, net inclusion community, is our ability to do movement building. And that's what I think we really need to spend the money on. This is it. You are part of the movement. And we need that movement. It's not going to be just one federal agency or a couple of federal agencies. It's not going to be a couple of state broadband offices. It's not even going to be it's not even just the people in this room, right? It is going out there and building a movement of church groups, nonprofit groups, community centers, state and local governments, where everybody feels like part of their responsibility is to make sure that their neighbors, their communities are thriving online, and that we have meaningful adoption, that we put all the pieces together. And we're only going to get there if we are able to build that movement. So I just will say thank you, Angela, for your leadership. Thank you all for your leadership and your partnership in building this, and let us build that movement so that this idea of an internet for everybody becomes a reality at last. Thank you.
So big thank you to Alan for spending his valuable time with us, and him seeing all of your beautiful faces and knowing our community. So thank you, Alan.
Excellent. Have a good rest of your day. Thank you.